There is a piece of drone footage that occasionally goes viral on Reddit, and the first time you watch it, you assume it has to be fake. It shows a Disney water park, fully intact, slides still standing, changing rooms still in place, a wooden bridge over a calm lagoon. The kind of place you'd see in a 1980s Disney commercial. But the lagoon water is opaque and bright green. There are no guests, no staff, no towels on the chairs. Vines have grown through the railings of the slides, and in the background, just a few hundred feet away, you can clearly see the white concrete towers of Disney's contemporary resort. This wasn't an old vacation photo. This wasn't somewhere outside Orlando. This was inside Walt Disney World. And it stayed exactly like this, untouched, for nearly 20 years. This was Disney's River Country, the very first water park ever built at Walt Disney World. At one point in the 1980s, it was one of the most popular water attractions in the entire country. Millions of guests passed through its gates, and then one day, in November 2001, Disney closed it for the season and never opened it again. They didn't tear it down. They didn't announce a closure. They just locked the gates, walked away, and let the Florida swamp slowly take it back. So how does that happen? How does a fully functional Disney water park on the most valuable theme park real estate in the world just sit and rot for 19 years? To understand that, we need to go back to the very beginning. The year was 1976. Walt Disney World was still relatively new, having opened in 1971, and Disney was looking for ways to keep guests on property longer. The idea came from Walt himself before he died. He had imagined a rustic swimming hole experience built right into the resort. Something that felt less like a chlorinated pool and more like the country swimming spots he remembered from his Missouri childhood. And so, on the southwestern shore of Bay Lake, just a short boat ride from the Magic Kingdom, Disney built River Country. It opened on June 20th, 1976. The theme was pure Tom Sawyer. Wooden bridges, a sandy lake bottom, real lake water filtered through the park's natural sand. The centerpiece was a swimming lagoon called Bay Cove, fed directly from Bay Lake itself. There were two main slide complexes, Whoop and Holler Hollow and Slippery Slide Falls, both built into a rocky hillside. There was a barrel bridge, a tire swing, and a kiddie area called Cypress Point. Admission cost just $5. For Disney guests in the late 70s and through the 80s, River Country wasn't just another attraction. It was the attraction. Long before Typhoon Lagoon or Blizzard Beach existed, this was where every Disney family went on a hot afternoon. The park was small, only about 500,000 visitors a year, but it was almost always at capacity. By the early 1980s, Disney was reportedly turning guests away at the gate before noon during peak season. But there was a structural problem baked into River Country from the very beginning: the water. Unlike modern water parks, River Country didn't use chlorinated water. The whole appeal was that it felt natural, that it was real lake water, filtered through sand and a primitive screen system. And in 1980, just 4 years after the park opened, that decision caught up with Disney in the worst possible way. An 11-year-old boy from New York named Vincent Comparini visited the park with his family. A few days after swimming at River Country, he developed a severe headache and a high fever. Within a week, he was dead. The cause was Naegleria fowleri, a rare amoeba that lives in warm freshwater and can enter the body through the nose. Once inside, it causes a brain infection that is almost always fatal. Disney quickly settled with the family. The park stayed open. But the story spread quietly through the industry, and Disney's lawyers started watching the water at River Country very, very carefully. Through the 1980s, Disney kept River Country running, but the company's strategy was already shifting underneath it. In 1989, Disney opened Typhoon Lagoon, a massive new water park 3 times the size of River Country, with chlorinated water, a wave pool, and a real concrete lazy river. In 1995, they opened Blizzard Beach, even bigger. River Country, the original, was suddenly the smallest and oldest water park on property, and the only one still using lake water. Then came the lawsuits. In 1986, another guest contracted Naegleria fowleri at River Country and survived, but the case settled out of court. Then a second amoeba death was reported in the late 80s. Each incident was buried quietly, but Florida regulators were watching. By the late 1990s, the state was moving towards stricter water park regulations, requiring fully chlorinated, fully filtered, and continuously tested water in any commercial swimming attraction. River Country's filtration system simply could not meet the new standards without a full rebuild. Then came September 11, 2001. Like every Florida tourist attraction, Disney saw an immediate and brutal collapse in attendance. Park hours were cut, staff were furloughed, and on November 2, 2001, Disney quietly closed River Country for what they called the off-season. Guests at the resort were told it would reopen in the spring. It never did. Spring 2002 came and went, then summer, then 2003, 2004, 2005. Disney never made an announcement. There was no farewell event, no last day photos, no press release. They simply stopped including River Country in resort maps. They stopped accepting reservations. The shuttle buses stopped running there, and the gates stayed locked. Inside the gates, nothing was removed. The slides stayed, the signs stayed, the pool chairs stayed lined up in rows along the empty beach. The locker rooms still had towels. The gift shop still had merchandise on the shelves. It was as if the park had simply paused, and the staff had walked out for lunch and never come back. For a few years, Disney maintained the property minimally. The grass was cut. The buildings were patrolled. But by 2005, even that stopped. Bay Lake water was no longer being circulated through the lagoon, and without circulation, the water in Bay Cove began to stagnate. Within a few years, the lagoon had turned a deep, opaque green. Algae bloomed across the surface. Florida vegetation crept up the wooden slides, and here is the part that genuinely seems impossible. None of this was hidden. River Country sat directly along the Bay Lake boat route between Disney's Contemporary Resort and Fort Wilderness. Every single day, Disney's own boat captains would pilot guests past the abandoned park. You could stand on the deck of a Disney watercraft, look to your left, and see the slides, the bridges, and the lagoon all sitting there, slowly being swallowed. Photos started appearing online in the late 2000s. Disney enthusiasts on forums shared blurry zoom-ins from the boats. Drone footage emerged in the 2010s, showing the inside of the park in stunning, unsettling detail. The lagoon, by then, was the color of pea soup. The slides were structurally rusting. Trees were growing through the wooden walkways, and still, Disney said nothing. It wasn't until January 2019 that Disney finally announced what would happen next. The site would be redeveloped into a new resort called Reflections, a Disney lakeside lodge. Demolition of River Country began later that year. By the end of 2020, almost every trace of the original park was gone. The slides were torn down, the lagoon was drained. The bridges were removed. The Reflections project was then paused due to the pandemic, and as of today, the site remains a cleared, empty lot, just waiting for construction to resume. River Country was open for 25 years. It then sat completely abandoned, in plain sight of millions of Disney guests for nearly 20 more. There are still photos of the empty lockers floating around online. There are still blurry shots of the Green Lagoon taken from the back of a boat, with the Magic Kingdom monorail visible in the background. And there is still a generation of guests who remember being 12 years old, standing on Whoopin' Holler Hollow, looking out across Bay Lake at Cinderella Castle in the distance, and thinking they were in the most magical place in the world. Most of them have no idea the park even closed. They just know that one summer they went back, and it wasn't on the map anymore. And I'm curious, did you ever visit River Country? Or do you remember seeing the abandoned slides from the boats? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you're subscribed.